life, typically you're going to start at the beginning. You're going to talk about where they were born, who their parents are, how they grew up, those types of things, right? Because our lives start at birth. They start at life. You talk about somebody and you talk about the things they accomplished during their life. And if they're a big deal, sometimes we talk about the things that they accomplish after their death, like their music or their art or the things that they did in history.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
But we always start with life. However, for this series, we're going to talk about somebody that we don't even get to know until they are at the end of their life. We're talking about Lazarus for the next couple weeks. And maybe you've heard of him, but we meet him in the middle of the Gospel of John in chapter 11. There's a few things that we get to know about Lazarus. We know his name. We know he's from a town called Bethany. We know that he has two sisters, Mary and Martha, and we know that they are very close to Jesus. They're his friends. And we also find out that he is very, very, very sick. So sick, in fact, that his sisters send word to Jesus to let him know. Now, if you're sending word to Jesus, you're probably hoping for a miracle in this situation. We've seen lots of people reach out to Jesus because their family or their loved ones were sick. And now Mary and Martha are doing the same thing. They're sending word to Jesus and they're letting them know, hey, Jesus, your friend, our brother, he's sick. We need you to come home. Now, the reason Jesus wasn't in Judea, the reason he wasn't with his friends at this time, is because 2 chapters back, in John 9, Jesus does a miracle. And typically, you'd be pretty excited about a miracle. He had healed a man who had been born blind. And this was something that did not happen. It had never happened before, and no one even think that it was possible until Jesus did it. And you would think that everybody would be super excited about it, right? Like, why aren't we throwing a party for Jesus? He just healed this guy. He was born blind, and now he can see. Go, Jesus!
Go, Jesus, it's your birthday. You're gonna save our lives from the worst fate. You died and was revived to send us to heaven's gate.
But that wasn't the case. The Jews in Judea saw this, and they were so just confounded and confused by it, and so upset about it, that they wanted to kill him.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man.
So Jesus and his disciples have to take off. And now they're fleeing Judea. They're away from their friends and their family. And they are trying to save their own lives because people wanted Jesus dead. But now he's got a friend in Judea who really needs his help. So let's see what happens in this first act of the life and death of Lazarus. Now a man was named Lazarus, and he was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. And when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, let us go back to Judea. In this moment, Jesus is facing death head on. He is facing death in one sense because these people want him dead. There are people in Judea who want to see Jesus dead. And they're going to stone him. They're going to do whatever they have to do to get rid of him. So Jesus has to walk back to Judea knowing that people want him gone. And also, he's got to face his friend who is dying. He has to walk into that real situation with his real friends, people that he really, truly loves, with the potential of seeing his friend incredibly ill. Now, I know that some of you guys may have been in a situation like this before, and it is heavy, and it is hard. But it is something that Jesus, in his flesh, when he was on earth, he faced it also. He knows what it feels like to stare down death. So let's see what his disciples have to say about all of this. Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by the world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. And after he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going, therefore, to wake him up. Jesus already knows. He can already sense it. He already knows that Lazarus has died. This sickness has taken over his body, and his friend is gone. But just before that, Jesus said that this isn't going to end in death, right? He said, this sickness isn't going to take Lazarus. God's going to be glorified. So the disciples are probably a little confused. Actually, they're very confused because they go on to say, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better.
Please, please, sleep is good for you.
Good, yeah, guys, good job. They think that Lazarus is still sick. And of course, if you're a little sick, you take a nap, you're going to wake up feeling better. And they say, let him sleep. He's going to be fine. Jesus, don't worry about Lazarus. They weren't catching on yet. So Jesus, of course, had to explain it. He told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So Jesus is making this big decision. He's walking back into Judea, into a place full of people that want to see him dead. But he has to go, because he also has to face the death of his friend. And his disciples are right along with him. And it's because of them that Jesus is going back to do something even more miraculous than we saw in John 9. But we're going to save that for a later date. What I do want to also point out, though, is that Thomas says something right at the end in verse 16. He says to the rest of the disciples, let us go with him, that we may die with him. Thomas gets a bad reputation for being the one who doubts. But I want you to at least get in this moment that Thomas is ride or die with Jesus. He knows. He thinks in his mind, if we go back to Judea, we're toast. But if Jesus is going, then I want to be with Jesus. And if Jesus dies, I'm going to die right alongside of him. So the disciples and Jesus make their way back to Judea, which I'm sure was a heavy trip, which I'm sure was a struggle. And we're going to see next week how Jesus really feels about his friends. And we're going to see how this moment impacts him emotionally, because Jesus felt everything we feel. And Jesus experienced the same things that we experience, including death. But this week, when you go to your life groups, I want you to talk about that. I want you to talk about how Jesus looked death in the face and goes back to where he was hated, and he returns to a place that doesn't want him there for the sake of his friends and for the glory of God. You may be going through a season where you just feel like everything's falling apart. You feel like every time you turn around, something's just crumbling around you. Maybe it really is death, or it is sickness, or it's your friends leaving you, or maybe you feel like the world is against you and you're just going through this season. But I want you to know that Jesus faced this head on, and he is right there with you now, walking through these things. So, if Jesus is going, let's go with him.